welcome to everybody. This is our last meeting for 2023, and I'm sure that next year we will have more information and new ways of helping the family to just understand addiction a bit better, so that the support can be there from the parents. So today we are going to just go through, it is called the Transtheoretical Model. It is also known as the 6 different stages of change that a client or the loved one will go through after he's been through his addiction and now coming into recovery. I'm gonna bring in the different patterns of denial, and I'm sure that Ingrid, in a couple of sessions ago, she had a presentation on the patterns of denial, and I'm going to bring it in today, as well as the 5 pillars that I will just incorporate in the maintenance stage in this presentation for today. So the Transtheoretical Model, it's also known as the 6 different stages of change, like I've explained. And yes, this is the stages of change are an upward model that goes through a series of changes and finally transform the individual in the exit stage. Now, the exit stage is where a client or the loved one went through a maintenance stage into his termination stage, where then he will be in a different or a new lifestyle where he can maintain his sobriety for the rest of his life. The first stage is the pre-contemplation stage, and I'm quickly going to go through this, but we'll go in depth into each and every stage. So the first one is the pre-contemplation. It is where he's not ready for change, but awareness to be raised. Then secondly, it is the contemplation stage. It is able to see the problem and think about their behavior, and they can monitor the situations. After that, it is the preparation stage, where the individual wants to change their behavior, but is not entirely sure how. Then after that is the action stage. Now, the action stage is it's a lengthy stage, but he is ready to leave negative habits and leave these negative habits behind and moving towards the next stage. And the next stage then will be the maintenance stage, where it is managed to sustain the changes and the goals to keep things as they are. After that, it is going to go into the termination stage, where it will build better goals and make more positive life changes. And with that comes, being clean and sober for the rest of their life. Now, I know that whenever family or parents or co-workers give someone the opportunity to go to treatment, there's a lot of questions and there's a lot of uncertainty and there's a lot of fear surrounding it, because now the loved one is dropped off at a treatment center, and maybe there was an intervention, maybe it was due to law enforcement, maybe it was due to family or employment or any of those cases. Then a client comes into treatment. Now, the first stage that he will go through in order for him to get to the maintenance stage is the pre-contemplation stage. And this is normal for every client or every loved one that comes into treatment. This is the stage where he's not really ready to change, and he is in the denial phase. It's almost like he is the victim of this situation. This addiction happened to him, and he's not the problem. His employer is the problem. He's not the problem. It is his ex-girlfriend, or maybe even he's not the problem. His parents are the problem, and that is a normal stage to be in for somebody that went through recovery and is now in addiction. And I want to quickly go through the denial patterns with you guys. Now, denial is when someone ignores reality, he downplays reality, as well as he distorts reality. And like I said, Ingrid went through the patterns of denial, I think, a couple of sessions ago. And this is where this comes in. So that the 12 patterns of denial is its avoidance, it's absolute denial, minimizing, but just saying, it was just a couple of, I wasn't as bad as. Rationalizing, blaming other people for their addiction or their circumstances or their lifestyle, comparing, compliance, manipulating. And I'm sure that when I say manipulating, you guys everybody can relate there, because the loved ones that go through addiction immediately manipulate their families on an emotional level by making them feel bad for them, and almost putting them in a situation where the parents need to take a hold of the situation or help out and lie to his employer or bail him out of different situations. There's also the flight into health, recovery by fear, and strategic hopelessness, as well as the democratic disease state. Now, those are the 12 patterns of denial. Now, every client that comes in will go through the denial phase, and once they are starting to get out of the denial phase, they're going to go into, it's called the contemplation stage. Now, this takes time from client to client, and this is a stage where he admits the addiction and the disease, but there's no real effort to implement any stage. There's no effort to implement change or effort to do anything about the problem. So they recognize the disease. They almost can take responsibility for the addiction and the problems. They start to see that, okay, with the step work that we give them, with the step one incidents or the life story or the questions that they need to fill in, they come to realize that, okay, listen, I can see where I was wrong. I start to see the wrongs, but I'm not really in a position where I want to change anything about it. So in this stage, the client or the loved one is still in much of a victim mentality, where he's the victim of the disease or the addiction. And for each client, this also takes it takes different times or weeks for a client to go through these phases. And okay, thank you, Nosy. What do you think about the contemplation stage?
Edwin, you want me to answer?
No, I'm just asking for your input, and what do you think?
I think from there is when the patient is willing to start, to start with the process. They are there to say, I'm making this happen right now for myself. And they admit that they have a disease and they have an addiction.
Yes, no, definitely. And it takes, like I said, it takes time for a client to go through these stages. Okay, and the third stage that the client will go through .
Adrian?
Yes.
You still there?
Yes, I'm there. I'm just waiting for the third stage.
Oh, you want me to go to preparation?
Yes, please.
Okay. I'm trying to move. It doesn't want to move. Okay, there we go.
Okay, and then the third stage, it's called the preparation stage. Now, this is a stage where the loved one, he's come to terms with the wrongs and the addiction and the behavior and the different thinking patterns. And, he's a bit more clear-minded, if I can call it like that. He's gone through step work, and he can see the impact his addiction has on himself as well as his family, and how he might have lost his job, or how he was driving under the influence. Maybe he was caught by the police or his employer, or whatever the case might be. And he's aware of everything, but he's not entirely sure on how to change everything. So this is a good place to be in for every loved one, because now he's become willing to address the issue of the addiction and the behavioral problems. and then to just act on it, to take responsibility and say, okay, listen, I see this is what went wrong, this is where I went wrong, this is what I'm struggling with, these are my thinking patterns, this is my addiction, and I might have even more than one that I wasn't aware of. And then he's at that stage of, I want to change, but I don't know how to. And a lot of people tell me that, listen, you need to change this, but in the stage of the preparation stage, he's preparing himself to go into an action stage, which is the next one. So whenever he goes into the action stage, this is when the loved one is, he is ready to change. He wants to change, and he is actively making changes in his thinking and his behavioral issues. And he's addressing his addiction, and he's very conscious about all of his behaviors. And in this stage, it takes quite some time to almost like condition yourself in this stage, so that whatever you're changing becomes a new learned habit, so that it can maintain you for the rest of your life, so that you can build on these new behaviors and the new relationships with your family. And in the action stage is where the magic happens. I usually tell the clients that, the longer you can be in this action stage, the better you can almost imprint the new change in your life. And the reality of the story is, and recovery is, a lot of the times clients want to rush this action stage just to go through it, just to say that, okay, I've done this, what is next? And unfortunately, this is then where, the new behaviors or the new changes that happen will be short-lived, unfortunately. So for me personally, the action stage, the longer the better. After the action stage, it is called the maintenance stage. Now, this is our first stage of change that a client will go through when he is in recovery. Now, this is where where sustainability comes in. He is constant in his changed behaviors, and he's maintaining the new lifestyle. Now, this is where whatever he's been taught or whatever he's changed in his action stage will now reflect in his maintenance stage, where everything that he's learned, now he has to maintain it and build on top of it, so that he can have this new lifestyle of clean and soberness for the rest of his life, where he can be an example. And on the maintenance stage, there is a thing where we call it the 5 pillars that comes in. Now, the 5 pillars is where a loved one will have to go to meetings, he will get a sponsor, he has to carry on with his step work, and he has to be for service, as well as have a relationship with his higher power. Now, the 5 pillars in recovery is non-negotiable. And the better you can implement them in your action stage, the stronger it will be and the more evident it will be in your maintenance stage, so that you can build on top of this, because this now has become your new lifestyle. It's almost like the new blueprint for being clean and sober. And, this makes me excited, because this is now where a new person is almost born from, if I can call it like that. But this is an exciting stage. And then after this, it's called the termination stage. This is in where he went through his action stage, maintenance stage. Now, this is where he builds on top of this life blocks, where he builds better goals, and he makes more positive changes in that he maintained in his action stage. So this is just continuous improvement, where he will just have to build on and make sure that he follows his 5 pillars. And from there, if he can do this, then I'm so excited to see where a person can be, because I've seen the hopelessness even from the family side when they come into treatment, and to get to this point where there's a new person with a new lifestyle in front of you. And it takes time, and it takes a lot of hard work and introspection. And it's just when there's that hope in the eyes again, and it's beautiful just to get to that place, and so that you can have your loved one, so that you can have your old loved one back, but just even better. So after this, yes, thank you, Nazi. So let's quickly recap on what's been discussed. Each and every client that goes through addiction will come into treatment and has to go through the 6 different stages of change. It is called the pre-contemplation stage, where it is, I'm not the problem, my family is the problem, my employer is the problem, I'm the victim here. I shouldn't be in treatment, this is a mistake. After this, he will go into the contemplation stage, where he will start to think about the consequences of his addiction. He will realize that there is some, he will realize in his step work that he needs to take responsibility for a couple of his wrongs, but he's not yet sure how to change anything. And in that stage, he's not really willing to do anything about it. After this, he's going to go into the contemplation stage. The contemplation is where he realizes his addiction and the behaviors, and he will start to think to change, but he won't be sure of how to go about it. It's a very uncomfortable place to be in, the contemplation stage. But after that, it's the preparation stage, where he's now become willing to change. He wants to change, and he's implemented some strategies and coping mechanisms to help him to deal with this new ways of change. Then is the action stage, where he's going to take full responsibility and consciously implementing changes in his life. And in the maintenance stage is, like I've explained with the 5 pillars, whenever the day he steps foot into treatment, he will be made aware of the 5 pillars and the importance of them. And by the maintenance stage, he will have a good foundation of his 5 pillars. And then after that is the determination stage, where he will just have even more goals to set for himself to maintain this clean and sober lifestyle that he is on. And this is the different stages of change that a client has to go through in order to have a new lifestyle.
All right. Thank you, Edwin. Thank you. Thank you. Any questions?
Edwin, I was just wondering, as you were going through the presentation, it all looks very neat and tidy, but it isn't neat and tidy, correct? So, you've got these stages and it looks perfect, and it's very similar to the stages of grief and that kind of thing. And it's not like this happens in a week, this happens in 3 months, that happens. It's not a one leads to the next, to the next, to the next. What does it present as?
Yes, guys, definitely. It looks good on this format, and the actual fact is recovery is it's vicious. I've heard clients tell me that addiction is easy because there's no real responsibility, but to go into recovery, all of a sudden you're overwhelmed by all of these emotions, and now you have to deal with all of this behaviors and the emotions that comes with it. And the first stage, Kate, and is the denial phase. And it takes people weeks to just go through it. And there's a lot of step work and almost fighting, if you will, fighting with yourself and struggling with yourself to get through this denial phase and just to take the responsibility, because your level of commitment to your recovery has to be at 100% in order for you to just go through the next phase. And it is a constant thing, Kate. It is an everyday, almost fight for your life. And it takes time. It's not a thing where you say that, okay, listen, I've been here for 2 weeks, so I should be in my action stage. It unfortunately doesn't work like that.
Yeah. And the stages, they don't have to be clean cut. So you can have a bit of denial left while doing your pillars, while doing, so it's all enmeshed in one in many respects. But unless you do the denial phase first and have a consolidation of what you need to be doing, it's a little bit more difficult. But as you progress, you can regress back to stage 1 of denial, where you don't want to be seeing all the responsibility you need to hold. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes. And sometimes even you'll be at your preparation stage and all of a sudden something from your past comes up and you'll still be in denial about the fact that, listen, I've been gambling, but this is not a problem, even though I've sold my wedding ring. So yes, you'll keep yourself in denial about certain stuff up until it gets to a point where it's exposed. And then you will be from your action stage right in your denial phase again. It's an up and down. It's a constant fight with yourself and with recovery in order to get this.
And an ongoing awareness of the stages and where you're at entitles a greater level of recovery.
Yeah. If you know what to expect, I think you have a better understanding of where you need to push yourself towards to. Otherwise, I've seen loved ones just sit and almost wait for the change to happen without taking any responsibility or in doing any extra work in their step work, asking the counselors for advice and how to go about it. So yes, I agree with you fully.
And tell me, in terms of, you've got the identified patient going through these processes, etc. How can the family work with this? How can they take it on board? How do they support their loved one? What is it you feel that the family should be doing with these steps that you've presented?
I think if the family can, now that they understand that there's different levels of change that their loved one needs to go through, it's almost like I would almost ask them to just follow and trust in the counselor's advice in order to just, guide their loved one through recovery and the pace that they needed, instead of rushing the process and say, listen, this needs to happen, this needs to happen, there's an interview, what about this, what about that? Just to be in support of the greater cause of recovery, instead of, okay, listen, this is the time frame, this needs to happen, and let's hope for the best.
Yeah. Sorry, guys, just to add on Edwin's answer. With a Transtheoretical Model, firstly, we need to understand that it assists people to change their behaviors, and that happens at a baby steps. So it's not something that's going to happen within few months or a certain way or a certain direction that it needs to go through. So today it can be in contemplation stage, tomorrow it can be maintenance, and they can fall back to denial as well. So with that being said, I think the family members need to follow through the progress of the loved one as well and support their loved one and encourage them that it's going to get better with time. Attend the family therapy groups that we have here, and as well like seek their own therapy on their own side. So I think as well can assist that.
Yes, thank you, Nozi. I also think that the 12 steps, it's a blueprint that you can almost cover it with this transtheoretical stages of change. It's almost like the 12 steps will guide you into the next stage of your new lifestyle, if you will.
Yeah. There is a question from Amanda. Amanda asks, and I think you've covered it, but we can go back into it. Can you ask your loved one's counsellor in which stage he or she is at?
Yes, the best person to know would be, the clinical team, to discuss, where he might be, where he is today, and the concerns that they can raise. So yeah, definitely, I agree.
And
Yes.
I think it's the theory's great, but applying it to practical life, you've got to understand that they can move forward in progress, and then they can regress as well, which means that you've got to having an understanding of what the stages basically look like helps you identify how well they're doing and where you need to step in and say, well, I think have you been to a meeting? How's it going? And curiosity and asking the questions without directing is the best way to handle your loved one. Be curious about their recovery process. Ask questions about it. Explore with them. And if you feel that there is a process going on of regression, ask the right questions. How many meetings have you been to? How are the meetings going? What did the meetings look like? Is there anything you want to share around it? Is there something you'd like me to understand about it? So I think curiosity around it does help you to feel more empowered in the situation, because I think often one of the greatest manipulations is, this is my recovery, I'm going to do it alone. And the reality is, it is their recovery, but unless they're doing it in communication with you, it can become quite tricky. So fostering a healthy communication, and it's not the directive parent-child kind of communication, it's kind of adult-adult. So there's a respect level, but you also don't need to continue to take manipulation or being shut out. Edwin, I don't know if you agree with that.
Yes, Kate, no, definitely I agree with you. Initially, when the loved one comes in, it's almost like he has been babied into a place, where they, you have to look after him. You have to make sure he does everything that a adult is supposed to do, and that is exhausting for any family member to be that, to live another life, and you're almost putting your own life on the back burner. And the other thing I want to add, Kate, is I've seen that when a loved one goes through, especially the pre-contemplation, contemplation stage, and I've seen what happens at River Manor. Hey, it's almost like the action stage. It takes, works its magic, and yeah, because of because the primary care, and then with River Manor the secondary care, we allow that loved one to just allow him to get his recovery, without being forced to do so. And then after this, the maintenance stage, I wish everybody could do this, but the halfway house. But that is just my...
There's a question from Ray, Edwin. Would it be correct to say that secondary covers to the termination stage?
You can say so, but like we've explained, it's individualized. I can't say that because he is in secondary care that he will reach a point where he's at his maintenance stage. Some loved ones will reach it, yes, but some needs to go into a halfway house where he will develop on his 5 pillars, like we've discussed in his action stage, and then where he goes into his maintenance stage in a different setting or a different environment. So it is person-centered, Ray. It's not real. It's a difficult question. Yeah,
and I think I concur with what you're saying in terms of, everybody's progress is completely individualized. Some people do primary, but their entire primary is hard, fast denial. So by the time they get to River Manor, they're not even breaking through the denial yet, because they're kind of entrenched in their ways. Others have been through treatment phases before or are ready to start making changes, and therefore it comes a little bit easier for them. And I'm not saying the process is easy, because it's not, but it comes a bit easier to relinquish that control over it and to admit to the wrongdoings and to admit to what they're responsible for and the chaos that they have created, and to admit ultimately that they are not in control, that they are powerless. And powerless is a very scary phase to go through, I think, for anybody. And so, you know, getting to that place is huge, but everybody does it at their own time.
Yes, Kate, definitely. I like how you bring, you know, that powerless, that word into this discussion, because this is the fundamentals of step one, you know, where we admit that we're powerless over our addictions and that our lives have become totally unmanageable to a point where someone else needs to manage it for you. And eventually you find yourself, bam, been in treatment. And now it is scary for the family members and for the loved one to be in the position. Say, okay, listen, what now? What now? All of a sudden, I have paperwork. They give me step one, and you know it's scary to be at the place. But if you allow yourself, if a family allows their loved one to just go through this properly, in order for this not to happen again, and for the loved one, for the client himself, to just come to a place where you can allow yourself to give yourself this opportunity for a new lifestyle.
And I think you touched on something really important, which is the flip side of the loved one's process. It's not only difficult for the loved one to start making changes, embracing the powerlessness, etc. It's also terrifying for the family members to realize that they are powerless, just as powerless over the addict's addiction, which means that they can't rescue them as much as they want to, need to feel this parental responsibility or loved one responsibility. The reality is, at some point through the process, that desperate need to rescue has become dysfunctional and enabling of the individual. And that's very difficult for loved ones to let go of, because, you know, there's so much fear invested in it. And when your loved one is in care, whichever stage, the family need to be doing the work behind the scenes on themselves, in terms of there's got to be very firm boundaries. There's got to be an understanding of, well, how did I enable this? What are the things that I need to look at and start doing differently? And if you're doing that work in parallel to their work, the possibility of a positive outcome are far greater. But it's hard work and it's difficult, because you are in a place of fear. But that's where we encourage the families and family members to please also seek help, come to these groups, learn more about it, understand yourself in terms of the disease. So I think for me, powerless is not just for the addict. Powerless is for the family.
Oh yes, definitely. It's the family dynamic is it gets to a place where it is dysfunctional, whereas the parents find their purpose in rescuing the loved one. And as soon as, you know, he goes or she goes into treatment, it's almost like that purpose is now gone. So the family members needs to, like you said, Kate, needs to educate themselves, join these meetings, ask the right questions, speak to the counselors, find out what's happening and how they can support in the correct manner, without enabling or without being overly protective.
And it almost feels non-parental or non-loved one-ish, because you actually need to lay that very firm boundary and understand what that boundary means and what the consequences mean. So whilst watching them in their behaviors, you've got going through this process, you need to understand where your limits are. You need to set your firm limits in terms of, if you choose not to do the process and work the stages, then this is what I'm not prepared to continue with, and set that very firmly. So it's working from both, and I think there have been presentations and there will be more presentations on helping the family understand what it means to set those hard limits. And they are hard limits because they're counter parental. It does feel like it's, you know, you don't want to do more harm, but what if they threaten suicide? And what if there's a whole bunch of emotional embeddedness in setting boundaries, and we get that. But what we have seen through years and years is that without those, clients don't generally get better, because the change has got to come from all aspects of the family dynamic, from all of you. Things have got to change on all levels, and having an understanding of these stages allows you to understand when you need to be a little bit firmer, when you back off, when things are going well and you're more supportive, but when you set those firm boundaries too.
Yes, yes, definitely, Kate. I agree with you. It's almost like a parent going against the grain of parenthood when they have to implement those boundaries, because, you know, parents want to protect, they want to love, they want to make sure that nothing happens to my loved one. And it's natural. That is a natural response to any parent. And to get to a place where you now have to put boundaries in, it's like you said, it is very hard, but it bears so much fruit, not only for the parents, but for the recovering addict as well.
Absolutely. Well, in many respects, the parent regains a sense of their own life, and they can start healing and growing whilst allowing the loved one to do the same.
Yes, yeah, no, definitely. I agree with you, Kate.
Yeah. I know we've got a very small group this evening, and, you know, the level of commitment from being here tonight on a public holiday, Christmas, does speak volumes and does put you in a really good place. But we're here because we're a small group. We can absolutely answer and ask questions if there's stuff you want to know, even not necessarily on this topic. If there's stuff that you're battling with or want to ask about, please feel free. I mean, the three of us are here to help and give some answers as best as we can. Obviously not specifically around your loved one, but around addiction. And yeah, if we can help you, we'd love to try. So if there are any questions, please do let us know.
And as well, maybe we can also open the space for them if others, they want to share their own experiences.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
how they've been coping as well.
Yeah, that'd be lovely. Thanks, Naz.
We have one question from Lindiwe. She's asking, is the step work and 5 pillars done concurrently?
Edwin?
Yes, yeah, definitely. The step work, as soon as they are admitted, step work is being given and they're being made aware of the 5 pillars and what is to be expected when you do leave, so that you need to get a sponsor, you need to go to meetings and to implement those 5 pillars. It is not a place where they immediately start with it when they come into treatment, but it walks hand in hand.
So I think in primary, you're learning to get a very thorough, in-depth, concrete foundation of what the 5 pillars are. So you might not implement them immediately, because we've got to understand what the process is, what it entails, how it reflects and how it works. So there's a lot of learning in the primary stage. There's a lot of getting to understand what addiction is, how it works, how it's those kind of things. Okay, we've got another question. When visiting your loved one in rehab, what should we and what shouldn't we be discussing? Obviously, in addiction, encouraging the process. So what would your advice be in terms of visitation, and what should be discussed and what shouldn't be discussed?
I would keep it relevant to the recovering process. Maybe asking, listen, how are you doing with your step work? How are you feeling with regards to seeing the psychiatrist? How is your relationship with your counselor? What have you been implemented? What do you feel needs to change? Without getting to a place where you take their mind on the outside, speaking to them about their ex-girlfriend or the using buddies that they had, or that whatever it was in his past life.
Yeah. So it's not necessarily, sorry, Naz.
It's okay.
Do you want to go?
Oh, yes. I'll just add on Edwin quickly. I think it'll be very encouraging to speak positivity with your loved one, because firstly, we need to understand that they are in a space whereby they are trying to fight for their own life, like recovering process, and in that way, speak about relevant things, be here now, and encourage them that there's a brighter side, keep going, those positive words. And as well, as Edwin mentioned earlier on, that you don't have to be now dwelling in the past and reminding them of their traumas or the things that they did, because already they are aware of that, and the shame and the guilt that they are carrying, it can trigger them by that time when you remember the time when you used to do this, and it can be really challenging for them to move forward, as well. So I think positive talk, and as well limit the issue of romanticizing about substances, taking them back to the time when they used to use their substances, or as Edwin said, about the friends, about the girlfriend as well. Those negative thoughts or conversations, we don't need them in that time, because they might trigger them to go to.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and now I just wanted to add in terms of that, if your loved one's very early in the stages, I wouldn't touch on what was just said. I would, for the first time, start sharing where you're at, and not about the outside world, but in the relationship between the two of you. It's got to change to start including you and your relevance as much as it, so both, because they've got to learn how you're doing as well and reflect on that. So I would, if there are things you're learning, things that you're encouraged by, things that you're happy about, I would start sharing about that. I had a lovely trip to X, Y, and Z. I did this, or start sharing more to show that you're not enmeshed in their process, that actually you are separate, and they learn then that you're not there just at their beck and call, and the process is not solely about them. And they will learn that through the stages. When they become more healthy and more in tune with the process and working a good program, and your counselor will tell you where they're at in terms of that, absolutely, I'd start engaging what you're finding challenging. Ask the questions that you want to ask. How do you think would be best for me to support you? What are your expectations of me as a loved one? What do you need me to be start looking at? And vice versa. What have you found most important for you? So it's curiosity, but with a positive start. We're not going back. There's always a lot of hurt and a lot of pain and a lot of stuff. And often what happens is it twists the process, because you come in, and as a loved one, you almost need that space to offload your stuff and tell them how much they've hurt you or destroyed relationships or created damage. They're doing that work in treatment, and they also, you will have that space to explore that in your conjoints. But when you're together one-on-one and you're visiting, it's about rebuilding your relationship in a new way. So I would keep focusing on, how do you want your relationship to look going forward? So start discussing that, and that kind of open communication. And if it's not going the right way, change it to surface level stuff. You're just engaging, and you will sense when's right and wrong. If you start to get emotional about it, that's telling you that you've gone somewhere that you shouldn't perhaps be going at that stage in the relationship. I don't know if that helps, or do you guys agree with that?
We agree with you.
I agree with you, yes.
Okay. All right. We have 10 more minutes left. Are there any other questions? Ray, did that help you at all? Is there anything else, that you'd like to ask around that?
Kate, I would just also like to add on that, maybe, you know, when a loved one is in addiction, the family members, now I'm speaking about the mother, the father, the grandparents, the brother, the sister, they tend to walk on eggshells around the loved one that is in addiction. And it's because of fear. And now when they're in treatment, you can, and you see them, you know, it's you don't have to walk on eggshells anymore. You can practice good and healthy communication skills and say, listen, this is how I feel. This is what's going on for me. And, you know, without that fear of he might hurt himself, or without the fear of he's going to take his car and he's going to go to his friends and I'm not going to see him for 2 weeks again. You know, just to speak to him in a normal adult to adult manner.
Yeah. And it's about learning to communicate in a different way with the comfort that he or she's in a safe space. And
Definitely.
I think, yeah, so you start and learn to communicate in a different way.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And just to add on that, like, I think as family members as well, they need to learn how to create boundaries in a way that they maintain that boundary that they are creating. Most of the time you can say to your loved one that is in addiction that you mustn't go to this place. Initially, firstly, they will say, oh no, it's okay. Maybe it's going to see the friends. They must stand firm with the decisions and maintain that boundary, not like for them to say sometime, okay, maybe let's give it a benefit of the doubt. No, stand firm with with the boundaries. That's when they will learn as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes,
and I mean, sorry,
Kate. Yeah, just to add on that, the boundaries that the family has to set has to be clear and specific so that people understand, listen, this is where I'm at. Please don't cross that boundary. And whenever somebody crosses that boundary, you know, you can have to remind them, listen, my boundary is X, Y, and Z. Clear and specific.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, in the next couple of weeks, what I will do is we will set up that the next person or the week after we'll do a talk on boundaries and just help reiterate what those are, what they look like. It's not punitive, but it is firm. And it is always difficult. So, but what I would do after this is take the information that's been given here and do your own homework around the stages and get your own familiarization around what we're talking about and have an understanding so you can apply it in real time.